Hello, everybody. We are live. Claire Wasserman here, founder and author of Ladies Get Paid. We are an educational platform, global community, and of course, a book all about helping women earn more and live better. And if you've been following along, you see that almost every day, if not every day, I go live with a different coach who also shares our mission, but maybe is tackling it in a bit of a different way. And so today we've got Rachel Lawrence, who she is going to go into more detail about what she does because she knows herself best. But in short, and you tell me if this is the way that you like to describe yourself, would you say personal finance coach?
Yeah.
But you do more than that. And so today, yes, we are talking about money, but more specifically, we're going to be talking about what Rachel calls the softer side of financial planning. We're going to go into things like what is somatic finance? How do you get an abundance mindset? Energy work. So if you're feeling like this is kind of woo-woo, I would love, Rachel, for you to dispel, or maybe not dispel, make the connection between how the woo-woo can actually help you, if not make more money, feel like you have more money, which at the end of the day is the most important thing. And so thanks for being here. And I would love it if you maybe could tell us just a little bit more about what you do, but also why you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that I'm here talking about this because I am like one of the most analytical people you're ever going to meet. So like, I love the numbers. I went to school for finance. I got a master's degree in personal finance. Like, I love the hard numbers. And I realized along the way that for a lot of my clients and also for myself, it wasn't about necessarily the numbers, because money, especially money, is never just about money, right? It's your childhood, it's your memories, your emotions, it's freedom, it's power, right? Systemic and individual power. Sometimes it's even physical feelings in our bodies. So I think the biggest thing that I've discovered along my path, and maybe that gives you a sense of where I came from, but an undergrad degree in finance and then a master's degree in personal finance. I worked in this industry for 20 plus years. I've always loved money and thinking about it and trying to figure it out for myself, probably because I grew up without it. Mm-hmm. So I've always been trying to figure out like what good habits to put in place. So that brought me through like traditional financial advising, investment management. And then I started working for some fintech companies, financial technology companies that really were trying to help the masses, like democratize financial planning services. And as I really got into that real life finance with real people, average people like you and me, I realized that the numbers don't always help as much as we want them to. Mm-hmm. Often it's all of the things around money that end up making the biggest difference in your personal finances, not tracking necessarily in a spreadsheet every single day.
Right.
So that's kind of how I ended up here. That's why I'm talking about this woo-woo side. And I have the credentials to back it up, but I think that this is actually the more powerful thing. And honestly, at this point, I'm seeing so much automation in the financial side of things that I think this is the direction that most personal finance coaches are going to go in the future anyways. Because this is the harder
agree. I totally agree. And I'd love to hear for you any personal stories, whether it was from your life or any clients, of these aha moments, realizing that it's not just about the information, but rather how you feel about the information that can make the difference of, your relationship with it, but then the actions you take. But for me, quickly, I realized that I needed to do a lot more kind of psychological, energetic work around money when I knew all the reasons I should be investing, compound interest, et cetera, and I just wasn't doing it. A big part of it, I think, was that my mindset was still stuck in the time when I really made no money. And some childhood stuff, and I hadn't yet caught up with the reality of the numbers in my bank account.
For sure.
Curious for you, when either personally or in your clients, where you've seen that kind of aha moment that unlocks your ability to say, you know what, can we go down the direction in a little bit of a woo-woo direction, but I promise it works.
I see it all the time. I think personally, it started to come to fruition for me when I was working for these fintech companies. I was making more than I'd ever made before. I was getting equity compensation, which was incredible. And I still hadn't really saved my emergency fund yet. And like, that's 101, right? That's like basic personal finance. We know that it prevents severe financial hardship. So I actually even recommend doing that before you pay down credit card debt. Save a month of income before you do that because it's so critical. And yet here I was, and I had barely like a couple $1,000s in an emergency fund because I was spending it all on all these other things that were like, felt so much more important to me. And so I started teaching people and like really exploring the idea of prioritization. How do we prioritize? How do we come up with the way that we spend our money? I had a client who was like a chief executive type of person, executive level officer in New York City, worked across the street from Saks Fifth Ave. And so she was making like $15,000-$20,000 a month or more, but she was spending 20 to 25 because on her lunch breaks, she would go down to Saks Fifth Ave, look around, make a little purchase, and it just added up. Like every day she'd be doing this. And so between my own trying to figure out like, why am I not saving this emergency fund? I know how important it is. And then looking at some of my clients, what they were going through, what their struggles were, this woman in particular stuck out for me. I realized it ends up being your core values, right? So this is one of those like woo-woo things that is directly tied into the money part. What do you value? So I went through some exercises. I actually keep this. This is my favorite pack of cards, Think to Perform. They do a great values card deck. I go through an exercise with core values at least once a year, sometimes 2 or 3 times a year, to sort out what are my current top core values. What is true in my life when I'm living at my best? Or alternatively, if you want to ask yourself the question, what is missing when you are not living at your best? Okay. Right. So I ask myself those questions. I go through this card deck sorting thing, and I always come up with a list, which I then keep right on my desk, right next to where I am, so that I always see it, because it reminds me of why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. So in my case, I kept prioritizing adventure and personal growth and challenges over security and safety. Like that wasn't a top core value of mine. And so I needed to reframe what it meant. An emergency fund actually meant freedom and autonomy. It meant that I could leave a bad job, a bad partner, get out of a bad living situation. I needed to reframe my need for adventure and personal growth and find it in other ways that weren't, travel around the world and things like that. So I directly connected it for myself. And then I saw this work really well with other clients. So my client who was going to Saks Fifth Ave every day realized that she was bored and she needed more. And it wasn't actually about the shopping. It was about doing more in her career, which is so funny. Like I would never have guessed that would be the thing that was opposite for her and helped her stop the spending. Right. So that triggered all of this for me. I realized that core values become this central thing to money in particular. And then I started thinking about all the other ways in which our mindset and our brain take over. They control us when we are thinking about money, when we're thinking about practical day-to-day stuff. So I think about like security and foundation. So I just got a Reiki level 1 certification in January, and Reiki has a lot to do with energy. So you're talking about the chakras, and your root chakra is foundational security. So how are you pulling that up around you, and how are you like blocking yourself from everything else that you want to accomplish because you're so concerned about security, which often has to do with money, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of security in that.
By the way, I got a question. Marissa asked a question. She wanted to repeat. It's think to perform. And I put it in the chat. I don't know if you can see it right there.
Yep. Yeah, that's my values card deck that I love to use.
Really interesting. Mm-hmm. Besides, maybe we could just walk through, if I were your client meeting for the first time, if this is a place you would want to begin that you think would be most helpful for folks, just like really 101, the questions they should be asking themselves to get into a place where no matter how much they're making or not making, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much you make, it matters how much you spend. Clearly, in the example you gave, how do we get into that place of abundance? So where do we start?
Yeah. Okay. Let me just say first, I just want to acknowledge right off the top that like lots of people have these systemic factors that are working against them in their money, right? So sometimes it is about the income. If you're struggling to put food on the table, like that's a hard time to have an abundance mindset. I've been there. My family's been there. I grew up that way. Sometimes that scarcity is real, right? And there's like all of these systemic biases that are fighting against you, including late stage capitalism, right? So abundance doesn't always just help every single scenario. So I am passionate about activism as a way to provide abundance for everyone, because I do feel like that's an important thing to point out. Okay, but with that aside, knowing that that's the case, we all feel money so deeply, even in our physical bodies. So I like to think of it as like anytime you feel stress, I'm sure there's probably a body part of yours that hurts or aches or starts to freeze up, right? When you get anxious. For me, it's almost always my left side of my neck, especially this week. My husband's in Japan with his daughter. They just arrived. So I'm like feeling it right there in my neck. And anytime I'm nervous about money, I find the same thing. So what can we do to process those feelings instead of storing it in our body? So that's sometimes something that I would talk with a client about initially, like, pay attention over the next few days when you think about us working on this money stuff together. Where does it feel tight? Where do you start to have like pain in your physical body? Because that's a signal. Your body's giving you a signal. It's storing up information. It's like needs to get processed somehow. So how do you process that? And then I try to give somebody tools to process some of those feelings and those emotions and those thoughts. Breathing exercises like box breathing. I don't know if you've done this before. You inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, right? Box breathing. Mindfulness meditations, paying attention to all 5 senses. That's a really easy one to do to bring yourself back, process the feeling, notice what's going on in your body. Energy healing like Reiki, like encouraging folks to go through that. I love to use this on myself now as a level 1 practitioner. There is a woman named Gail Knight Coleman, who is sort of the founder, if you will, of this idea of somatic finance. So somatic just means having to do with the body. So all that stuff I just said about feeling these physical feelings in your body, this is a lot of her work. So Gail with a Y, Gayle Knight Coleman. And if you go to her website, she has some excellent practices about noticing these feelings and then processing them in your body, so that you can actually deal with it instead of storing it up.
Right. Yeah. Love that. Posting it in on all channels. There we go. I'm so glad.
So the website is just somaticfinance.com. Super easy. Somaticfinance.com.
Okay.
So these are all excellent ways to process. And as you start to process, one of the things you're aiming for is moving towards internal sufficiency, which is really hard for a lot of us, right? Internal sufficiency with money. And then that internal sufficiency actually ends up leading to generosity and abundance and those types of feelings. So that's really the pathway that I see towards abundance. And you can try all of those techniques, but I will say one thing, they all start with one thing in common, which is simply curiosity. Curiosity without judgment. So noticing, right? Noticing when you're feeling scarcity. I can't share this info with a certain person because they'll get ahead of me, or I can't let this car ahead of me in traffic because I'll fall behind and I'll be late. Or I'm feeling dissatisfied or believing I'm not enough. I'm worrying that I don't have the time or energy to finish a project or something personal. Just noticing those feelings as they come up, noting them, the mental technique of noting, just noticing without judgment. Judgment is the first step that I ask a lot of clients to go through as things come up for us in our conversation. So if I hear someone say, I'm just not good with money, or I've never been able to do this before, I'll say, okay, well, like, I want you to take 5 minutes. Let's just sit for a second. And you can close your eyes if you want to. You don't have to. I know that's really woo-woo for some people. You can close your eyes if you want to and just sit with it and say, what feelings do I feel when I notice this about myself? When I say I'm not good with money, or I can't invest, or I'm not investing yet. what feelings does that bring up inside? And then noting with curiosity and no judgment where that is. Is it in your heart? Is it in your solar plexus? Is it in your gut? Is it in your brain? Like, where is it for you? And then you use those other techniques that I just mentioned to start to process it. But just that curiosity in and of itself can be it can be life-changing for creating that sense of abundance, right? And then once you start to notice those thoughts and puzzle out why you're having them, maybe it was your past, maybe it was a belief you have, religious belief you have. Honestly, maybe it's just the capitalist consumer culture we live in now, right? We've created this thing over the past 100 years, and then you can just accept them as a thought. They are just a thought. They're not you unless you go take action on them. So just noting them. And then slowly, as you practice that, you can start to incorporate trying to substitute other thoughts, right? So instead of feeling like, I can't let this car in front of me in traffic because I'll fall behind, or I can't share this piece of information at work with somebody else because they're going to get the promotion that I want, or something like that, the scarcity, then you can start to substitute it, celebrating the success of others instead, practicing gratitude regularly. This is something I love to do at bedtime with my kids. My kids are still pretty young. So every night at bedtime, as we're going to bed, we say 3 or 4 things that we're thankful for, or you can do it at dinner with the family. Just practicing gratitude regularly really helps with abundance and substituting some of those thoughts out, and then processing some of those emotions and creating this internal sufficiency. And then core values are always kind of the place I end up coming back to again, right? So taking a close look at them. If you haven't figured out where yours are yet, the 2 questions I ask myself are, what questions are true in my life when I'm at my best? And what concepts are missing from my life when I'm not at my best? And I did this just recently with a friend, actually on a hike. It was really fun. We discovered that some of her core values are health, challenges, adventure. Challenges and adventure kind of are similar. Freedom. And then once you know what those core values are, you can start to notice when you're feeling particularly scarce. So usually it's when you're not living in alignment with those core values. But on the other hand, you're usually feeling pretty self-sufficient, pretty sufficient internally, and living in abundance when you are living in alignment with your values. So for my friend, we talked about what this means. That means she no longer wants to just talk about how health is such an important value to her. She no longer wants to just talk about how much better she feels when she goes out for a run or goes to the gym regularly. She's going to actually make it a priority, right? Like schedule it in, put her shoes out in the morning, like the night before, all of this good stuff, all the techniques we use to try to fix a habit, because it is so important to her. And once you start to feel like you're living in alignment, that sense of abundance can carry over to all the other parts of our lives, especially areas like our finances. So my favorite thing to do with private clients is to combine all of those techniques alongside making an actual financial plan, right? Like, we're not just going to forget about the numbers because they're really important, but we're going to incorporate all of these things alongside of the numbers, and we're going to figure out what actually works for you and what your options are. And then if you have a decision to make, like, you could go this way or you could go that way. You could buy a house at this price and do this to your budget, or you could buy a house at that price and have this happen with your budget afterwards. We pause and we think about, okay, what feelings does this bring up inside of me? What am I physically feeling in my body as I process this way versus this way? Sometimes I do a yes, yes, yes exercise and a no, no, no. Have you ever done this before?
No.
Oh, it's so fun. And it's so powerful. So all you have to do is sit somewhere that you don't feel weird, that you're not going to feel awkward about it, and just say yes over and over and over again. Like, yes, absolutely yes, heck yes, or F yes, or whatever you want to say, like really passionately. Notice where you feel the yes in your body.
And you're not thinking of, there's not a prompt first, like imagining a certain decision and then
yes. You're
wow.
just
Okay.
word yes.
Okay. I'm writing this down.
Yeah, right. And so you're just saying it over and over and over, and you're noticing where you feel yes in your body. And then you do the same thing with no over and over and over again. No, absolutely not. No way. Say it over and over and over. I now notice these feelings in my body. So as I'm saying these to you, I'm like, my no is a feeling deep in my gut. I like immediately will notice as I say no, that there's a feeling in my lower belly. And when I say yes, it's somewhere like halfway between my heart and my solar plexus. So like just below my heart, but just above my solar plexus. And I can feel it now. And that really helps me as I'm making decisions when I know that like 2 decisions are probably going to be okay. Either way is going to be okay for me. If I need to make a decision that way, then I often do this like yes, yes, or no, no exercise. And then I come back to it and I say, okay, how do I feel? And then I try to find where that feeling resides in my body. And that's my clue as to what I should be doing to go forward. Yeah, so that's how I combine all this.
Yeah. And I think that's a great exercise that, it's an exercise in connecting with your intuition.
Yes, absolutely.
And finding way. I love, everybody says, oh, like listen for your intuition. Yeah. I think that takes practice. And so to try to find your intuition when you need it is confusing. Chances are you're going to be hearing the insecurity, not the intuition, and then you confuse it. So I love that this is like strengthening that connection when you're not trying to make any sort of decision. So that's awesome. I'm curious though, for somebody who is like, okay, great. I now better understand, how my body feels in relation to my mindset. And then I'm getting clarity on some decisions because I trust my gut more. However, I need to make some serious behavioral change when it comes to money. Yeah. I'm aware, which is the first step, but then there's the taking of the action and then sustaining change. That's right. It's much harder. Of course, we only have 8 minutes to discuss this, but curious what, a few tangible tips people could take away with that.
Yeah. So my favorite book on that whole subject is, of course, Atomic Habits by James Clear, because it helps you connect those, the way that you want to structure your life around these things. So even just incorporating it into another routine that you have, so that there's like habit building, right? There's always habit building, but I think it goes deeper than that. And actually, I just today tried a new therapy that I'm super stoked about. I'm trying it for myself first because I want to know what it's about. So I don't have I can't tell you my full opinion about it because I just started today. But there's a therapy technique called RTT, and I cannot even remember what it stands for, but it's basically a combination of talk therapy, hypnosis, and there was one other piece of it that I cannot remember for the life of me. So I did this morning, literally 4 hours ago, went through this thing, and you go into this deeply relaxed, hypnotic state, and because you're relaxed, it's not meant to control you, but it's meant to allow you to relax enough that your brain can bring up the stuff that it's holding on to. So I asked to talk about, I personally have this big thing with FOMO. I hate missing out on stuff. I just hate it. I don't know why. So I have FOMO all the time. And I'm I want to deal with this because it affects everything. It affects my relationship with my husband. It affects my relationship with my kids. It affects my money, everything. So let's start with this one. This is a really great issue to tackle first. And it brought up all of these things that I didn't even realize my brain was holding on to, these examples of times when I had been left out. And then it allows you to go deeper and question that feeling. What is that feeling doing for you? What is it actually doing to help you? Because obviously everything we do in our bodies is a coping method. It's trying to protect us somehow. And so I realized this is a coping method for me to protect myself from feeling worthless or feeling not good or all of these other things that came up throughout my past. And so now eventually what you get to is you talk to this issue wherever it is residing, and you reframe it and you tell it new thoughts as you're in this deeply relaxed state. And it's supposed to help with changing that habit, internal change, long-term structural belief change, so that you can act differently now that you have integrated this piece of your mindset and your mentality that has not been integrated before. It's been hanging out, it's in there somewhere, and you're just not fully aware of it yet. And so this was so interesting. I'm still processing. I found it incredibly helpful this morning because there was all this stuff that came up that I didn't even know that I was holding on to. So I'm looking into that as a big part of this therapy. I'm looking into things like talk therapy, right? Like I may go do my PhD in financial therapy because I believe that there's so much to be said for the counseling and the therapy side of it. So behavior change is difficult, not going to lie. It's even hard for me as a professional. I know all the right things to do, but you can justify anything. And so it comes down to, what do you value? What do you believe about yourself and the world? And how can you start to shift those beliefs? And that in and of itself, right? Shifting beliefs is literally the crux of coaching. That is the crux of coaching, is shifting your beliefs, changing your perspective, getting a shift, right? And so I'm a huge believer in multiple types of coaching. I encourage my clients to see career coaches, to see sleep coaches, nutrition coaches, parenting coaches. I have all of these like folks vetted that I can refer clients out to, because that coaching, that discussion, where someone can bring you to a new insight about yourself, is one of the most valuable things that we have in this world, especially as women, where we don't get as much of that socialized from a young age.
Yeah.
So I really think coaching is a huge part of that behavioral shift. I do some of it in my practice. And then for the parts that I don't work on, I refer out to other coaches as well.
I love that. In the final minutes, I'm going to ask you the question that I ask all the coaches, that come on, which is beyond what we've talked about here. What would you say might be either one or a few fundamental elements that we all need to learn and really to be our best advocates in life?
Yeah. Okay. So to be your best advocate, I really think believing in abundance, not scarcity, right? Because when you do that, you bring in the whole community around you. We are not designed as human beings to be solo individuals. A lot of us feel isolated right now, and even more so over the past few years, but we're not designed to be this way. So bringing in community, and to do that, like, you have to believe that the other person in your community is not out to get you, and they are not out to steal your resources. So believing in abundance, not scarcity, I think is a huge part of this. Knowing your core values, knowing what is driving you. Like, that's hard sometimes to figure out. Even I am still exploring and still discovering some of these. And then using those core values to both set boundaries for yourself and also targets, right? So like the no's and the yeses that you're going to say yes to. And then I also think just surrounding yourself with positive people who are smarter than you. Like, this is one of my biggest goals in life, is to surround myself with that kind of person, because you end up imitating them, right? And kind of becoming similar to whoever you're spending a lot of time with. And then finally, unrelenting authenticity. Like, that for me, this is why I'm sharing with you all this stuff that I just discovered this morning, because this is what is true. Like, you have to be true to yourself. And actually, Claire, this is one of the things I most admire about you and in your interactions with all of us, is just unrelenting authenticity. You own it. You need to know who you are. You need to be confident about who you are, and not afraid to express that, because that is, if you think about it, that's what we all admire the most about other people in our lives.
Oh, no.
Nope. Can you hear me?
There you go. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I can. I'm like, oh man, I'm getting a compliment, and it breaks out.
No, it's what we admire most about all the other people in our lives, is unrelenting authenticity. When people are authentically themselves, that's what you notice about them, right? Yeah. So like, embrace the nerdiness. This is how I found my husband, on a matchmaking site, because I wrote about how nerdy I was. So those are the big ones.
Amazing. How can people find you, follow you, and most importantly, pay you?
Oh my gosh. Okay. You can find me on 2 different websites. My private client practice is just reveriewealth.com. Reverie, like the French word for daydream. So REVERIE wealth.com. My consulting, I do consulting for fintechs on lots of things, but mostly on coaching, to help them grow and scale coaching. That is called planventures.co. You can find me on Instagram at rachelsl.fp. please reach out and connect to me there. That has all the links out to everything else. And then, both Reverie Wealth and Plan Ventures have ways to schedule first-time initial consults with me to see if it's ever a good fit for us to work together. And from there, we would talk about payment. So
awesome.
Thank you.
And also for everybody who was like, I want links, guess what? Rachel's going to put them in right underneath the recording on our LinkedIn page. So if you were watching on our YouTube and Facebook, come on, join us over at the Ladies Get Paid LinkedIn page. You can also, of course, find me, Claire Wasserman. You can also find me on Instagram at Claire Gets Paid. And of course, ladiesgetpaid.com. It is a free community for all. And thank you so much, Rachel, for being here, for the work that you do. We should absolutely have you do something longer, maybe a webinar. Let's talk about that, because there's so many good exercises here I think would be awesome for people to do together. It's like, because it's one thing to hear about it, but when you experience it, and it's so profound because it's really simple. It's not easy. There's a distinction. It's not easy to do this work, but it truly is simple. And a lot of times we think we have to do so much more work, so much more doing, when it's really about the practice of being. And I love that you can sort of marry the like woo woo with the math part, with the data. I totally think they can go together. They should go together. And it's good. And it's good and interesting to hear that this is where you feel like the industry actually is going.
I do think so. Yeah. I mean, and I like in my consulting business, I work on a lot of automation. So I'm already automating all of this stuff that I'm telling clients to anyways. The part that can't be automated is the interaction and the coaching, right? The shift, getting to the shift with folks. So that's where I think we're headed.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks to everybody watching. Best of luck now. Go get paid.
Thanks. See ya.
See you next time.